lighting okay? It's different today because it's not light out. So I put a lamp. Should I turn this one off?
I think you're good. We're recording anyways.
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's what you say. It's what we want to hear. Okay, so let's just tell the background story to those who couldn't show up live. We recorded, we had this awesome conversation, and it just kept getting better and better, in my opinion. And then I ended the meeting and closed down my window, and there was this little notification on my computer saying, sorry, we didn't record it for you. There's no space on your computer. Have a good day. Click OK. It's like, this is not okay. Is there another option? This is not, no, I'm not okay with this. So that was okay. I thought that I would maybe just it was so good. It was so juicy. And I thought I would just send out, I would just recap it in writing. And I just thought that, first of all, it wouldn't do you justice. And I just thought that we just said so much. We just talked about so much. And I just thought that we should do this again. So I actually think this will be better because if you don't mind, if you're okay with this, I mean, you feel free to share as much as you want to share. I know what you do. And now I just want to powwow on the greatness of what you do and how important it is. So let's start with, what do you do, Chavah? What do you do, Chavah?
Yes. So on the surface level, I would say, okay, I'm a doula and I'm a childbirth educator. And I've kind of come into this specialty area of maternal mental health, past trauma, and birth trauma. Okay, so what does that actually mean?
Now what do I actually do?
So I come alongside moms during their journey of parenthood. And the crazy thing about being pregnant and giving birth is that it's the first time, if you're a first-time mom, the first time that you are going to be a parent. It's your first experience as a parent, and it kind of follows you through into being a mom. And so some of those first experiences kind of set the tone for your journey into motherhood. And hopefully they're good and positive, and they're things that can set you up for, I use the word success, but life going the way you see it going.
I use the word joy.
That's good.
Joy.
Right? Because it's not a success failure thing. It's just an is thing.
Peace and joy, fulfillment and happiness, love and relationships.
Yes, all those nice feel good words.
Yeah.
But a lot of times birth can be scary, and it can bring up a lot of past things, memories, emotions that you think you've kind of put aside. And you start your motherhood journey into the postpartum time a little off kilter. And things didn't quite go as you had planned, you had dreamed. And so it leaves you feeling just kind of shocked and confused and anxious. And so or
not even knowing what you're feeling, but you don't feel right. And you feel disconnected.
That's the other, you can either be too emotional,
something's
right?
Not right here.
Things are coming across.
This is not how I want to be.
That's right. Things are coming across as angry or forceful, or you've gone the other way, and you're closed off. And so you have all these questions inside, but nothing's really coming across, and you're not feeling like you're connecting to the baby. You're not feeling like you're connecting to your husband or your partner. And so ideally I can come alongside moms before the birth and help them work through some of those things that may come up during birth. But if not, I like to come alongside moms after the birth.
So that's your great value as a doula, is that you, in the moment, in the present, during pregnancy, that you are there to anticipate and prepare.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And as an educator,
for potentially very scary situations that that are scary because we're confused, or we don't know what's going on, or we weren't prepared, we're shocked.
Yeah, and the reason it can be scary, right, is even if things go completely, quote unquote, by the book.
Mm-hmm. Right, no complications.
Right, no complications. You know, you wanted to have a whole natural birth vaginally, and you achieved that. There were no intervention, so, you know, it looked like success. The thing that we're not prepared for is, I like to tell moms, and they don't really understand this until afterward, is you become 100% you during that labor and birth. Mm-hmm. What that means is,
who am I?
Yeah, I still ask myself that.
But how much more?
When I think about who am I, I'm thinking about it. My part of my brain that is thinking logically and exploring this idea of who am I is working. Mm-hmm. In birth, the place that a doula or a doctor, or a good midwife, I should say a midwife or a good doctor, wants to get you to this place of, help me, Liba, the survival.
They want to help you get there?
They want you to not survival. They want you to go to kind of your primitive brain, like this part where you shut off your thinking brain and you allow your body.
They just want you to go into automatic.
They want you to stop thinking and just listen to your body and let your body go where it needs to go in order to.
Most of us, that's not our automatic. Most of our automatic is, holy shit, I'm out of control. That's a lot of us is our automatic.
Right, because we don't know how to handle.
Right. We don't feel safe letting go.
That's right.
Letting go is very scary for most people.
Okay, that's right. And so you're taught, if you do any type of like birth prep, you're somewhat taught, okay, you want to go to this primal place. That's the word I was looking for. This primal place in your body so that you can feel your body and be in touch with your body, and you can let it do the work it needs to do. Just trust your body and your baby, and you can do it. These are a lot of key words, kind of, you know, top words around giving birth. The problem with that is, if you're not already somewhat in touch with yourself and your body, when you try and open that can of worms to go where they're asking you to go, instead of being focused on the present, all of these emotions and experiences and memories can flood you when you're there. Because, let's face it, our emotions and our bodies, they're not separate from, or our bodies and our emotions aren't separate. Our experiences are held in our bodies. It's just the amazing way we've been made that there is no disconnect really between how we think and how our body responds. We're kind of taught to disconnect these things, but if you take a class with you, some of these things are worked on how to connect the emotions we're feeling with the thoughts that are coming up for us, with the memories they may elicit. You know, all this stuff goes together, and even how our bodies are holding themselves. You know, are we clenched and is our jaw tight? So maybe we're angry, or do we feel a tightness in our muscles and we can't, you know, we're kind of having shallow breath. Maybe, you know, what are you feeling then? Well, that's fear. You know, trying to name some of these body sensations. So all of that to say, when we're giving birth, we have to allow ourselves to go to this primal place, but it is scary. And if you've not prepared yourself, you could have read all of the childbirth books on the planet, but if you haven't prepared yourself to go there emotionally, you know, the shit kind of hits the fan sometimes.
When you say primal, there are two things that come up for me. The first primal is we think animal. We think our animal, the animal in us, our basic, this is me down to my basics, as I'm really just part of the animal kingdom. This is my basics. And primal also for me elicits the thought primary, meaning first. So when I'm birthing, I am going to my first experiences of myself in this world. When I am in a position of bringing life into the world, I am face to face with life, and I like to add with death.
That's right.
And I'm in a primary state of being where I encounter myself in a primal form, and not just in my panting and my screaming and I'm disconnected from, I don't even know what time it is, how long was I birthing for, sort of thing, where my brain is working primitively. But in my emotions, I am working in a primal state in which I go back to my primary sense of self. I am, like you said, I am 100% me. Now, for a lot of us, that can be very scary because I am not comfortable encountering myself. Don't feel safe with myself because I don't know myself. I have not been given permission to be myself. Being me is associated with shame or with fear, with abandonment and sadness, with loss and loss and separation. And then you were speaking about trust, like the primary caregivers in our birth, they want us to trust ourselves so we can trust yourself and like trust? What do you mean trust? Like, wait, you want me to trust myself? I can't trust anybody else. Like for many of us women who we think we're the only ones. And, a lot of what is the motivating force behind Motherhood in the Making was for me to stand up and say, hey, ladies, you're not the only one. Because so many of us, we know it cognitively, sort of hypothetically, but I'm going to tell you 100% that more women than not struggle with trust issues. They struggle with feeling safe, particularly being women in this world, with themselves and with other caregivers. That in one way or another, most people have suffered one form of separation and loss that has impacted their sense of safety in themselves, where they somehow don't feel like they're on solid ground, meaning that they can't reach out to others. Which leads into my next question. What's trauma, Chavah? Like, how do I know? Because trauma is a big word. And trauma, right. You say trauma, I think war, terror, violence, but like my birth, well, it wasn't traumatic. So, but you and I both know you may not call your birth traumatic. We may not be using that word to symbolize the same thing. However, it could still be traumatic. So how do you define trauma?
Yeah, that's good.
In terms of birth. In which case I might need to revisit this and I might, maybe I should revisit my birth and consider how it's affecting me. What's trauma?
Yeah, so that's right. Trauma can be a little bit of a scary word. And so you may think it was negative or it didn't quite go as I wanted. One thing that a lot of times I'll ask my moms, because women come to me all the time with this, like, I don't know if it was really traumatic, but it didn't seem right. Do you want to share your story? Like if someone comes and says, how was the birth? Do you say, oh my goodness, let me tell you how the birth was, like, and you're excited about it? Like there's something in you that wants to share? Or is there something that says, it was fine and here's the baby? It kind of gloss over some of that.
Right. I want to add here, Chavah, as a practice for women who are listening to this. When Chavah says, when you hear Chavah say, so how was your birth? Pay attention to your body. Notice what's right in your body. And if I notice, I can say in my head, my birth, it was fine. Yeah, it was good. But I pay attention into my body. I notice a weight, or I notice like a heaviness, or I notice nausea or butterflies, or let me pay attention to my body, not the story at this point, but let me just pay attention to my body and see what comes up for me. Because sometimes we tell a story that we're comfortable with when really we're experiencing an emotional reaction that we are not giving ourselves permission to experience. And it's important, and I know Chavah believes this, so I'm just coming in to like echo it, that it's important that we give ourselves permission to pay attention to ourselves and to give space for what comes up for us. So go ahead. Now that I've paid attention.
Great. I'm excited that you, that's part of doing the repeat, right? Is like, oh, I should have said this, or I don't know if I said that right. And it's like, these are things I want to talk about,
Okay, good. I knew this would be better.
So one of the things that I do, if you sign up for a workshop, we can talk about that later, but
we will.
During the first meeting that we all get together, I do take some time for us to sit and feel, our body. And so I'll give some words like, okay, think about being angry. Just sit with that emotion for a minute. Where do you feel that? Or think about being scared, or being confused, and giving some time for them to really feel, and then somewhat talking about that. So when we go into the story part of when they start telling their story, I want them to try and already be in touch a little bit with, as you're telling the story, like you just said, I'm kind of reiterating, but as you're telling the story, what are you feeling? And if at any point during you telling the story, if your words aren't matching how you're feeling, just stop and take a breath. And instead of telling us the narrative, tell me about what your body is experiencing in that time. And so we try to bring some of that out and unpack some of that to show the links between, because why do we do that? What does it matter? It matters when, for example, we're at the store and our 2-year-old starts throwing a fit because they want the candy on the shelf and we can't give them the candy, and they start screaming and yelling and throw themselves on the floor, and they're, and people are starting to stare, and all these, your body, it goes into that survival mode. Like maybe it gets angry or it gets frightened because it doesn't want people to judge you. And you need to, in that moment, and you teach this all the time, you're so good at it, teaching moms to stop. What are you experiencing? You have to give space to yourself first, and then you can kind of ball that, and if you need to, place it aside so then you can deal with the screaming toddler, but you're doing it at a place that you're prepared to go. And it's the same way with, so the question, let's go back for a minute. The question was, how do I know if my birth was traumatic? If your emotions and your body are going to a place that you're uncomfortable with when you sit with it for a minute, then there's probably something there that you need to tease out. And that can be hard to hear because you may have planned to have things go a way you wanted, and then they ended up going that way. And you're like, what the hell? You mean I'm still stuck with negative thoughts and feelings about something that I tried to, plan for so well? And I do have a healthy baby. My baby isn't, he's thriving here. Why do I still have this stuff I have to deal with? And it can be, at least for me, really frustrating, because I think not only do I have to deal with my past, like all of that stuff that's come up, now I have this experience that was supposed to be the best thing of my life is here, and, I have to deal with that. But at a more, so that can just be at a level that we can do some introspection and see that there's some stuff there. But maybe you're not in a place. Oh yeah, go.
I want to add, because I want to highlight to the women who are listening to this, that in addition to this reaction, when I consider my birth experiences, there is shame, which we spoke about the last time we met. And so you're paying attention here to the thoughts that come up for me. That we're talking about, really, Chava, I think you'd agree, I think every woman benefits from processing in one way or another their birth story and their birth experience, because it is such a significant experience. And not only because, okay, on paper, I'm bringing life into the world and I'm becoming a mother, maybe for the first time or again, but also because it is such a primal experience. It is our body in the deepest way, our body, whether you birth vaginally, whether you birth with a cesarean, whether you're put under completely, that you physically are in experiencing something that you are not in control of. Something is happening to you. And you mentioned in our last recording, in terms of trauma, how supported did I feel? Meaning in this very scary time, like let's say that some women had their experiences and they're like, it was amazing. I had an amazing birth. And when I talk about it, I feel invigorated and I feel alive and I could do it a million times over. And I'm so grateful to hear that story. There are also women who, like you're suggesting, will have a different experience to that question. And some people will cut off completely their head from their body. And they won't even feel the emotions that come up. So if you're like kind of numb, like, what are you talking about? That means that there might be something there, because we want you to be spilling with joy. And if you're not, well, what's going on there? What is keeping me from the emotion? Mm-hmm. And so I want to add that in addition to shame, there's also fear that if I open this up, and this I experience with clients in therapy, which occurs through the process of therapy, as we explore our experience of ourselves, the fear around opening it up, that if I open it up, I won't be able to close it. And there's a lot of sadness there. There's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of shame there. There's anger. There are a lot of very big emotions, powerful emotions. These are primal emotions. These are the primal emotions that we experience. And I'm not comfortable with those emotions. I personally, Liba, never had a place for those emotions. So now in adulthood, as a mother, I've had to develop my own awareness around that. And so it can be confronting to be asked that question. And so it's important for us to know, and I want to give permission to you, mama, listening, that whatever comes up for you, to notice, and without judgment. And that's what we do when we pay attention to ourselves, is we don't judge, is that we just let it come up. And even if we judge, to pay attention to the judgment, to notice those thoughts. What are those thoughts saying? And there we are stepping back. And by doing that, what we're doing, and we talked about the brain briefly, is we're activating the part of our brain that is responsible for self-reflection. And that's the part of the brain, which we'll talk about, that we use to tell our story and to integrate. And that's an important word. Integrate means that we take this very scary story that we're not connected to and we feel separate from, and it's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's shameful, it's over there, and we bring it in and we make it our own and we integrate it. It becomes part of us. And like you were going to talk about story, how our birth becomes one piece and it becomes a part of us, as opposed to we dissociate from it or we disconnect from it because it's not comfortable. And when we do that, you were saying, when we do that, we are leaving ourselves in a primal state. And in a primal state is not how we engage in meaningful, loving relationships, not just with our children, which is important to us as mothers, but as ourselves and our spouses and friends. And relationships really are the center, in my opinion, to a meaningful life. No man is an island. It's a form of torture to be isolated. So it's important that we can conduct these loving, supportive relationships and be there for our kids. We need to pay attention, and we need to pay attention to our experience. And even if that means paying attention and noticing that it's uncomfortable, if I can say to myself, oh, I don't want to do it, that's great. What's going on there? What is it that you don't want to do? What's so scary for you? And so you were saying, just taking a step back, how supported did I feel is another question that I can ask myself when I think about, well, was my birth traumatic? Is there something that I can unpack here and connect to in my experience? Do you want to talk more to that? And choices, you talked about choices, being given choices.
Choices are huge. But I think so we'll come to choices, but how supported did I feel? Because if you were supported, what that word really means is how safe did I feel?
Right.
And you may have been, a lot of stuff comes to you during birth, like comes at you. They're checking the baby's heartbeat, and you wonder, is it good? Is it not? You wait to see the nurse's face, what is she going to do? And sometimes she just wraps it up and walks out, and you're like, wait, is that good? Excuse me, is that fine? You're like, yeah, it's fine. Oh, okay. But so how safe did I feel? Even if things start to spiral down in a way you don't want to go, was there someone there, or in ideal situation, more than one person who let me feel safe? Because like we talked about earlier, you go to that primal place, you go to that spot where you are extremely vulnerable and open. And that's almost going to happen no matter how much you fight that, right? I mean, we as moms and as
women, the baby's coming out of your vagina. we have
tried to put so many masks on, right? for good or bad. We give the world this projection of who we are and who we want to be. And it's that onion that the closer you come to that baby coming out your vagina, the more of those onion layers, not just the clothes on your physical body, right? And that's the crazy thing is, as a lot of women, if they're
and you're feeling to poo.
Yeah, that's right. You're gonna poop.
Your baby and your poop. Just...
But that's a whole other story about microbiome and why you want your baby to have poop on it. That is great.
No, I'm
but
saying you're
aside from that, no, I know. Poop, right? I know. And you want the baby to go through your, anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Okay. I get excited. Why do you want your baby to get your poop on it? Let me tell you. Right. Okay.
Oh, right. Yes.
Because it develops their immune system. And it's great. Okay. Yeah. We're going to put that, we're going to box that. This is what I try. This is what I teach my clients. If something's coming up for you and it's not the place and time, how can we box it, acknowledge it, and put it on the shelf so that you can come back and revisit. Yeah. But when you're giving birth and you're shedding those layers and you're shedding those clothes, you'll find that a mom, a lot of times, you say, what were you wearing when you gave birth? And this is in a place where they felt safe and confident. They'll be like, I wasn't wearing anything. Yeah, they had shed all their clothes, and it's like all of those layers, all those things that we put in front of us. We've shed everything, right? And we have this direct access to our body where the baby has to come out of our vagina. Your legs are spread, or you're squatting, however it is.
Right. Or you're cut open. I want to also acknowledge women.
I know, that's what I was going to say.
Or you're on your back and you
Right, you have been cut open and you're exposed. And so sometimes, right, in these traumatic births, it's these moms, it's you have birthed. If you have a baby in your hands, you have given birth. It doesn't matter how this baby got there. Mm-hmm. You have given birth. And that is a process. That is something you have to acknowledge and be in awe of, and then allow yourself to feel that so that you can then find joy and pleasure and even empowerment. That's a huge word. We can unpack that, but empowerment in this strength in this experience. Yeah. Okay, so
support.
Dang it, I forgot the original. Support.
Safety, vulnerability. I'm writing notes.
So if you don't feel supported, if you don't feel safe, you're still forced to go there, to expose yourself and open up. But a lot of times moms have to disassociate, right? They have to pull themselves, kind of give themselves a barrier. You're not able to shed it all. And in order to do that, you shut yourself off emotionally, and you become numb. That's where some of this numbness comes from.
This is what happens in trauma, by the way. This is trauma, where you dissociate from yourself. And let me just say it loud and proud. Your emotions are the cornerstone of yourself, and you cut off from them. And so they get stuck, and they get stuck in your brain, but they're in your body.
In your body. Right. This is so crazy how, for so long, I think, not so long, I don't know, but I was taught anyway to separate my body from my emotions. Like if I started crying when I was a little kid,
calm down.
The voice I hear is, why are you crying? Calm down. Like control it. What's going on? This idea of grow up and be strong. And so we do is we just
shove it down.
Right. What we're feeling from our emotions, right? We don't share. Okay. So if you're not supported, if you don't feel safe, then you probably have bottled some of this up, and it needs to kind of be reopened. And like you talked about, this can be scary, right? You think, I don't want to open that. And the most common thing I hear, one of the most common things I hear from moms is, I don't have time for that. I need to be the mom for my kid. I need to, I have so much going on. I have to care for my baby or my toddler or even my teenager. This isn't just something that comes up 3 months after birth or 6 months after birth. I've worked with moms 15 years after their last birth.
Yep.
And that's what I tell them, that you're bottling it up now, but it's going to come out, right? It's going to, and if you enter into this journey with me to open this can of worms, I'm not just going to leave you with the lid open and splayed out. You know, one of the things that we talk about when we go into these workshops, because they're 6 weeks long, is each week, you know, we kind of metaphorically, we open the lid to what we're going to experience for the next hour, hour and a half. And then in order to go back to our daily life, there may be some places where we have to kind of put it back in the box and know that we're going to put it on the shelf. And I give you some kind of prompts and activities to work out throughout the week, where you can kind of reopen that in a safe place and shut it, so that then you can go outside. You know, I think I'm in my office, and this is where I have my safe place to open. I go back outside the door, and then I can start doing dishes, and I can play with my kids, and I can, you know, do laundry and take the kids to school and not be flooded with all of this stuff, because I've been able to box it and put it on the shelf, not to keep there permanently, but just, you know, sometimes we have to have the tools to be able to close it, but not permanently. And so that's the difference here, that if we're trying to put the lid on the box and get rid of it, we're not going to be able to get rid of it. It's going to come back.
Right. I want to talk now to just quickly, because when you're saying this, I think we think that we can do this on our own very easily. And
some people may be able to. That's okay. We'll give you some tools to do that. Go ahead.
But I'm not talking the boxing. I'm talking even that being able to box is to feel that this is okay. This is manageable. I can tolerate this. This is manageable. I can put this in a box. I can find a box that will suit it, and it will be contained, as opposed to there's no box big enough, or it will break out.
That's right.
It will take over. So this is done really with someone else. Like, this is something that I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying there is a great value in, especially if we're repairing our experience of fear and the lack of, and vulnerability, where we did not feel trust in others or ourselves, or we didn't feel safe and we felt very threatened, then we are repairing that through our interaction with, with Chavah in a workshop, working individually, or in therapy, where you are repairing this experience of, I can count on someone else. And then I can recreate this model in my mind that there are people I can count on in the process of connecting with myself. So it's almost like you're getting, it's double duty. I'm discovering myself, getting in touch with myself. I'm discovering that I can handle this, I can manage this, this is okay. And I'm experiencing the support and acceptance of a caregiver, which I am not accustomed to. And so I want to just highlight that the value in reaching out for help to somebody is paramount. It's paramount, because as you're speaking about it, I imagine women thinking, oh, is that all I have to do? And I'm suggesting that perhaps that'll work for you. You have to be honest with yourself, and love, show love to yourself. And if I need something, then reach out and ask for it. And that there is value in doing that, in therapeutically just making the move to reach out to somebody and to say, maybe you can help me. Like, maybe I don't have to do this alone. Maybe I don't have to survive and suffer alone all the time and just pack it in and figure it out for myself. Like, maybe I can count on people. Okay, your turn.
That's so true. And
I interrupted you, I think.
I say this, no, it's okay. I say this kind of tongue in cheek. We are our own best deceivers. Like, we are great deceivers. We lie to ourselves all the time that, oh, this really isn't that bad. Or we can do this on our own. Or I've dealt with that and it's done with. But when we stop and really take that breath and do some introspection, we realize that there's something there, right? And allowing ourselves, giving the opportunity for someone to bear witness to our experience, meaning to come alongside and hear you and validate you. You may think, I don't need validation, that's dumb. But having someone come and say, wow, that really sucked. That was bad.
Right. And that's mirroring. That's called mirroring. They're basically saying, I see what you're going through and I'm going to mirror it back to you so that you can experience it for yourself. It's another way it gives you permission to say, yeah, that was really hard.
That was,
and that's with the value of mirroring. And I'm going to add this, like with our children, when we mirror our children's experience without imposing our own judgments or our own experiences of their experience, we're giving them permission is one word. We're giving them opportunity to experience themselves. And this is where we get into trouble, is where particularly we're talking about birth, is where we had a highly emotional experience simply because it was such a physical experience.
Yeah. Because
it was so physical, and because our body is the seat of our emotions. When you talk a physical, it will, our brain will have an emotional reaction to it, because our body is trying to just make sense of what's going on, because our brain is basically functioning to keep us safe and alive. And as soon as our brain experiences a tactile stimuli, that's our body, that's close. It's not my hearing, which could be a mile away, a saber-toothed tiger a mile away, or my vision, which is what, like how far can you really see? 100 meters. It's very close. If something's touching my body, it really can be very threatening. And your brain can't tell the difference between an attacker or a birth. Yep. So sometimes birth can feel like an attack. And so your brain interprets the physical body, physical sensations, and is like red alert, something is really wrong here. Pain, our relationship to pain, our relationship really ultimately to ourselves. Am I okay in this world? Do I feel safe in this world? And then I go into birth, and it suddenly touches on my sense of safety in a very, like you said, primal way. And so we're talking about things that are very deep here that can come up in birth. And we talked about last week, and I, how do I know I need help? Because this is where I would say, this is why it's so important that we pay attention to this. Because this is what happens if you don't pay attention to it. How do I know I need help, Chavah? Like, how do I know I should reach out? Other than when you ask me how was my birth, I have a visceral or cognitive or emotional reaction to it. What else is going on in my life that might tell me that I need help?
Yeah, so I go to this one all the time because it's probably my own ways that I handle things. Is if you find yourself getting angry, and not really having why, just anger or overwhelm, or you used a good one, numb, like I'm not really allowing myself to touch into that. Is my relationship, am I not connecting with those around me the way that I want, as a mother, as a wife, as a partner, as a daughter? My relationships where I want to be connected, I'm not connecting. And I go a lot back to feeling, only because I, like you said, I wasn't really allowed to be in touch with my feelings when I was younger. And now that I have allowed myself to explore that more, I want to do it all the time, and I want others to do it too, right?
Yeah. Because when you connect with your emotions, you're like, oh, there I am.
That's right. This is
easy to think. Thinking is easy. It's you try not to think for a second. Like, it's always happening. Thinking is easy. It's the emotions that are harder.
So and this comes up regardless. If you don't go there, it's still there. And so it's going to find its way out in other ways, maybe through not being able to sleep, or sleeping too much, or having nightmares, waking up. The difference between, let's look for a second at ordinary memories versus traumatic or negative memories. So ordinary memories are stories. I go back to the stories a lot, but are stories that can kind of evolve and change, and they fade with time, right? You can think about an old memory you have and can be nostalgic about it, but it can kind of fade with time. When it comes to birth, this is the thing, even if it wasn't negative or traumatic, even if it was positive, a memory of birth sticks with us. There's been research to show that a woman, longitudinal studies, meaning they happened over time, that asked they're asked to write their birth story, 3 months after they had a baby. They did this, and they wrote their story. And then they were asked to do it again 10 years later. Can you write your story about what your birth was? and they write it. The crazy thing is, then those two papers were compared, and they were using verbatim, like the same language over time, because because we go into our body, we connect at a place that is so different than normal. It stays with us. Okay, so if it's traumatic and we have this memory that is negative or hard to cope with, it's accompanied by intense negative emotions. Those emotions, those primal emotions like fear and shame and anger, and even collapse, that numbness, that the inability to connect. It doesn't go away with time. Sadly, it sticks with us, and it comes out in flashbacks or in nightmares, or it comes back in our anger or our, pulling away from those we want to connect with.
Oh, it can show up, by the way, in any number of symptoms. Any number of symptoms.
Which is why our connection, right. How we eat.
And really it's about, and a lot of these things you'll see, in our relation, and I was going to say the relationship to ourself in terms of our self-care, meeting our basic needs and being in touch with those needs, and also how other people's needs can trigger us.
And our trauma or our negative experiences, I know trauma is a big word, but I don't have another word yet to put in place there, but is intergenerational, meaning that it goes from generation to generation. And so if you're not dealing with it, someone else is going to have to, right? Yeah. So, if you have shit in your past, which almost all of us do, if not, I'm thrilled.
Right. But what you're saying is sometimes the shit in your own past isn't actually your shit, it's your parents.
That's exactly right. That's crazy. So I like you're dealing with it, right? And we as moms, we don't want to give that crap to our kids. But unless we deal with it, unless we open it up and say, okay, I'm going to face this head on, knowing that I have the support and the love and the care that I need to do it in. And that's why it's good to get outside help, outside objective help, someone who can come into the situation and not go on the waves with you. They can kind of be your steady person. If you don't deal with it, you're going to give it to your kids. And that feels like a huge burden. Okay. So now it's just the way that it is. It's okay.
Now pause, Chavah, and I want to ask you, listener, to just what Chavah just said. If you don't deal with it, you're going to pass on to your kids. What comes up for you when you hear that? What thoughts go through your mind? And what sensations do you feel in your body? Because I anticipate a lot of people going to a defensive denial, where they say, not me. No, not me. And I respect that, and I will not challenge your defenses, because my job is not to make you anxious. My job is to help relieve your anxiety so you feel safe. That's my job. And I know that's your job too, Chavah. And that's my primary job, is so that you can feel safe in this relationship, where you can feel safe to open up at your rate and at your pace and encounter yourself when you're ready. But since you're listening to this, let's get crazy, and let's just call a spade and say that we have these defenses that will keep us from owning our shit. And that's a truth, but I also want to challenge it and say that sometimes while those defenses function for us and help us survive psychically in this crazy world, they can keep us from connecting. They keep us from connecting, and not just to others, but to ourselves, which is what we need to connect to others. So I might hear you say that, and I notice this thought going through my head saying, no, I'm fine. And like you said the last time we spoke, it's behind me. It's over. Who cares? Like I've been telling myself for years, like my dad died when I was 8. He died. He's dead. It's over. And now as an adult in my own work, am I allowing myself, with the help of another person who I can feel safe with, to encounter the grief and to encounter the sadness, And I realized, oh, the reason I didn't do that was because it was so scary. And that's why we have these defenses. So notice what's going on in your mind, in your thought, and notice your reaction. And it's not to point a finger or to say, you know, or to call your bluff or anything, but to invite you to be honest with yourself and to be authentic with yourself from a place of self-love and self-care, that you deserve an opportunity to be whole and to feel safe and to be connected to your to yourself and to others, and to get love and to be able to give love the way you want to. So I have to put that in there. I have to tell that.
No, that's good. These defenses aren't bad, right? They're not inherently bad in of themselves. They've, in some ways, you've had to put some type of defense around because you have a newborn baby screaming and yelling that needs cared for, that needs nurtured, that needs fed, that needs changed. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have some type of mechanism to help you move forward, then you're not going to be able to care for someone else because the things that are occurring for you are going to take over.
Right.
And so you can step back, and it's not about being ashamed or being like, I can't believe that I shut myself off to that. How could I have done that? Acknowledging that I did what I had to do to survive. I did what was best for me at that time, but now I know better, so I can do better. And so you somewhat acknowledge that part of yourself and say, thank you for allowing me to get here. And now I'm ready to unpack it more.
That just like smashes the shame, because the shame is like this blockade that keeps us stuck in this loop of I say like this barricade that keeps us back. And the shame tells us, you don't deserve, you're no good, you messed up. You don't deserve happiness. You don't deserve joy. You don't deserve love. You don't deserve safety. You know, you're not worthy. And that
you're not
when
strong
you say,
enough. Look at you, you weak person. Like you had to.
This is your fault. You did something wrong here. And what you're saying is we can consider the possibility that maybe I did the best that I could with what I was given, and that I'm allowed to mourn that, to grieve that, to encounter the whole spectrum of emotions that I experienced. There may have also, and this can be confusing, but there was so much joy as well. There was joy and exhilaration and excitement, and there was fear, and there was sadness, and it was very intense. So how do I that's the word I'm thinking about. How do I come to terms with that? How do I make sense of that? And this is where I think story is so important, where we are, when we are encountering telling our story, and we are giving ourselves permission to see all of the angles of the story, and to break from the story we tell ourselves so that we can keep feeling safe, where we can encounter ourselves on a deeper level and rewrite the story. But this story is a whole story. This is the whole picture. This isn't just this isn't the story that I told myself from the memories that I have, which my brain created so that I could feel safe when I really didn't feel safe. But this is what really happened. And there we give ourselves permission to be real with ourselves and to be honest. And in reality, you are lovable. You are good. I don't care what you believe about yourself. That is just the truth. You came into this world whole and perfect and beautiful. And however people treated you is how they treated you. That does not contradict your greatness and your beauty and your wonder and your worth. So telling our stories again allows us to consider the possibility that maybe I'm okay. Maybe it's okay. And maybe that these emotions are okay. And maybe I can make room for the sadness, and maybe I can make room for the fear, and I'll be okay. And I won't drown in it, and it won't kill me. I don't mean physically kill me, but psychically kill me, because that's how it felt when I was giving birth.
Almost the same thing, right? I mean, if we break mentally,
my brain doesn't know the difference.
When we break.
Yeah, my brain does. Like I said, my brain does not know the difference between a tantruming toddler or a knife-wielding terrorist. Like my brain
feels the same.
Threat is threat. And I think, how do we know we need help is when things that I want to take joy in do not bring me joy. So I have a vision of myself enjoying motherhood. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't enjoy every moment, but that for me is a litmus test. Do I take joy in this? And if I'm not taking joy in it, what can I do to bring joy? Because at the end of the day, my kids are not going to remember what I packed them for lunch, or they're going to remember how much TV they watched. What's really going to matter and what's really going to be part of that story is how valued they felt. And did they feel loved and valued? Were they important? Were they seen? Were they witnessed? And you use this word. And this brings us back to our primal experience in birth. Like, I want to be witnessed in my experience. I need, after whatever happened, because it happened, things might have been in my control, and most things probably weren't in my control. I need to be witnessed in that experience, very much like our children need to be witnessed in their experience, because it needs to be real for me, so I can make sense of it, so my brain can understand it. And that's what happens in our brains when we tell stories, is that we unlock the emotions that we have locked away because they were so big and very hard to manage at the time where we felt very threatened and vulnerable. So for the sake of our survival, we had to lock them away. Otherwise, you can't get hysterical, or you can't get this way. Your life is at risk. That's what our brain says, especially a birthing woman. That's why it's so important for us to feel safe in birth, right? Like, that's why it's so important that you have a doula. And I wish I had doulas. Like, I wish I had surrounded myself with people who I felt safer with and who I could trust. I didn't trust people very easily, so that was sort of like off the list. But I wish I'd known that. I wish
That's right.
I wish I knew that. There are people who you can count on in this world. You know that you can feel love. You know you can receive love, and there will be no backlash, and there will be no consequence to that. You know you can feel pure love. You know you are lovable, right? Like, I didn't have that experience, so I never took a doula. But it's so important that we have these people in our environment who we trust, so that we are less likely to experience that intense fear that our brain reacts to as trauma, locking the emotion. And like we said last time, just because you don't let it out doesn't mean it's not going to come out.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a very intense emotion, and I sent out a blog, and you can look on my webpage, how to manage, I can't remember what it was called, I sent that last week, how to manage intense emotions. It's basically the story of last week. You should know, I was with, taking my daughter to a therapist, and she's my supervisor. Talk about trust. I trust her. She's my supervisor. She's amazing. She's seeing my daughter. She sees us as well, because as parents, you need the whole picture if you want to understand a child's experience. And we talked about the birth, and out came all that trauma, and out came all that sadness, and out came all that, the fear. But under the fear was deep sadness, which I believe most things pretty much come down to sadness. It's like the scariest of all emotions. And I thought of you, Chavah, and I thought, I could only do this because I felt safe with her. I couldn't even do it with my husband. My husband was there. He's like, how come we never talk about this? I'm like, I don't feel safe with you. I feel safe with Leah. And I could, and we talked about that. And, we were working on our relationship. And it really comes down to me feeling like I can do this. I can trust. I am worthy. I am lovable. And I think these are important sort of a priori things we need to understand when we think about getting help. Mm-hmm. That, first of all, just knowing that birth is scary. It can be scary, and our brains lock it in because it was so scary. And if we don't process it, then it will still wield its ugly head. It will still come out, and it will come out, like you said, through anger. And a lot of vets are angry, there's a lot of angry outbursts is one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Angry outbursts, feeling overwhelmed all the time, feeling numb, feeling disconnected and irritable. These are, by the way, our automatic responses to threat, fight, flight, or freeze. That's right. So, or you're fighting through anger and you're yelling at your kids all the time, get away from me. Or you're irritable, like, I need to run away and stop following you, stop needing me, and you're trying to flee. Or you go numb and you can't function and your brain doesn't work, in which case you're on freeze. And so really, you still feel like you're under attack. So you are still functioning as if you're there. It's like your brain hasn't moved past.
You can't leave it. Mm-hmm.
So it's important that we know that just neurologically what's going on for us and psychoneurologically, but also just giving ourselves permission that this is okay. That I'm not flawed in any way and I'm not bad. And that Chavah and I are both sitting here talking about our childhood experiences and saying and our own vulnerability, saying that it's doable. it's okay. It's doable. And it's not only is it doable, but we encourage it because on the other side is something
so freeing.
Incredible. Yes, it is so freeing. And sometimes we don't believe that it's possible. And so it's the first leap of faith that you have to have.
You don't even know that you need to be freed, right?
Yeah, right.
Realize.
Right. And so it's a leap of faith. And I think that I always say, like, turning for help is one of the most therapeutic stages. And also in AA, for example, when they say when I'm an alcoholic, when they state and they own the fact that I need help, basically, they're basically saying, I have a problem and I need help. That is the first step to your recovery, is saying that I'm an alcoholic. The same thing is saying, like, I'm struggling. And this is not the struggle and I'm not struggling because there's something wrong with me and I'm somehow flawed or insufficient, or there's another word that starts with N, that I'm not capable. But because I'm actually sort of drowning, or I'm holding a very big weight, and that's the trauma that we're talking about. Yeah.
And ideally, you said I would have taken a doula. Like, ideally, that's the case. You would have felt safe. You would have done this, but you didn't. But now you can take someone back with you to that experience. If they weren't there the first time, right? If they weren't there the first time, okay. So you know better and you do better. Now you can take somebody back with you to that experience, so that
talk about repair,
unlock, allow, experience, accept all of these things that happened. And that's where some of this, you say, rewriting of this story or creating this narrative, you get to, experience the negative, the fear, the sadness, and experience it enough that you don't just lock it up and push it aside. You allow yourself to take it in, but then you leave on the other side and you find that joy and that strength and that acceptance that you need in order to make the memory something that you're excited to open up and experience and share, right? And sharing that, sometimes you're like, I'm never going to share that story. And that's okay. But part of it is like that healing process, to find that healing and that wholeness. Healing's hard for me, a word, because, I see life as this journey, right? And you're going down this road, and hopefully you're going to continually find healing along the way. It's not just a one-stop shop and you're done with it. But anyway, taking someone back with you, finding that person to trust, and that's so hard, finding someone to trust, to take back with you into that experience. But that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. That's why other people are out there that hopefully can come alongside you.
Right.
And you can take back into that experience and feel safe with. And you're not alone, right? Like, we think, well, no one else is going through what I am. But the research shows, and I go back to research all the time because that's my background is in psychology, and I was trained in counseling and research. So give me research studies and I get excited. But
I feel you.
Somewhere between 24 and 34% of women label their birth as negative or traumatic. Right. That's 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 women say, this was not the experience I expected. There's this difference between your dream and the reality. And there's this gap there, right? And
that means that in the Mother in the Making community, the Facebook community, 150 women would easily identify as having a traumatic birth.
And they may not use that word, but when they go back to did I feel supported? How supported did I feel? Did I feel afraid? How afraid was I? When the doctor said, okay, the heart rate's going down, we're going to have to make a decision here. That's where the scariness and the trauma lies.
Right. The emotion, strong emotion.
The emotions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So tell me something. What can I have here written down? What can we do now? You have.
What can we do?
I'm excited about this. You will work with a woman one-on-one.
Yep.
She wanted some individual attention. You also have a workshop coming up. And you have some freebies. So tell me about all those things.
Okay. So if you're asking yourself, is it really negative or traumatic? That seems a little over the top. Really. There are some things that I've put together to help you kind of unpack some of that. One of those is called writing to heal. And so we know that research has shown us that just writing, and it's called like free writing, like taking that time to like feel that emotion and write out what you're feeling, can open up some of these places for us that we've shut down. Right. And so I have this worksheet that I made of prompts that explores some of these emotional words, attaching it to your birth. And then just some, I can't find the sheet, but just some prompts that shows how well I know my stuff without it in front of me. Just some prompts like... you
got a lot of stuff. You got a lot of stuff in it.
You know, when did I know my birth was going to become challenging? The point I knew my birth was going to be challenging was, or the secret I hold is, or the scars that I hide. And you start to unpack this, and it's called free writing, where you just allow yourself, you give yourself some space, and you just allow yourself to start writing. You know, you don't worry about grammar. You don't worry about, you turn off that thinking part of your brain, and you just start writing. And then you revisit it and see what came up for you. Mm-hmm. These types of exercises, you know, it's the whole mindfulness. You know, you teach a lot of mindfulness practices, Liba, on how to allow some of these emotions to come in and feel them. We feel them in our body. We feel them, you know, in our head. Sitting with that can sometimes open up an area where you're like, wow, I really need some support here. I need some help. I should reach out. Mm-hmm. That's one way to figure out. Mm-hmm. You may need some.
Right. And you reach out so that you can understand and you can make sense.
So that's doing it on your own, right? And sometimes yoga can help do this, like where you learn deep breathing and you learn how to connect with your body and your emotion and your breath. The cool thing about breath, side note, but we breathe automatically without thinking about it. Or we can connect to our breathing and it becomes a whole body experience. And so breath is one of those things that either happens automatically or we can turn on our thinking brain in order to breathe.
Right.
Sometimes it allows those emotions to come up and we can feel them when in the past we've not been able to access it. So breathing's really powerful.
Right. It's been called the bridge to the unconscious, the breath. Because you can activate your breath consciously. You can consciously activate something that is otherwise unconscious. And so that you are controlling in some ways something that is unconscious.
Wow. Okay, so that's where like yoga and mindfulness and some of these self-help techniques, right? And writing. And then maybe it's time, okay, now I need to unpack this a little bit more. I'm feeling these things. So you get
have
on
these freebies. So you have writing to heal.
Yeah, and then I also have something called Triggers 101. So your guide to identifying and conquering triggers in pregnancy. Nice. That's that part of finding how things may from our past affect us when we become 100% us. Nice. So like really brief story. I was working with a mom who amazingly was able to identify that she needed help before the birth. A lot of times we don't know that we need some support before. We come after the fact. And that's okay. But it's so much better before. So if you know a mom who is a first-time mom or even a third-time mom, or, you know, encourage her to reach out to somebody in advance to figure out what potentially is there that will trigger her, bring on negative emotion that she's not expecting. So I had a mom who I was working with who had a sucky childhood. Imagine that. And she, in order to cope, she just ate and ate and ate. And a lot of her emotions were wrapped up in food. And so she became a little overweight, and she was at school in the locker room changing, and she had so much shame around this undressing and changing. And then as she grew up, she came to have a really good relationship, at least what she thought, with food and exercise, and she became kind of her ideal person. But she was aware of that shame for her body. And so ahead of time, we kind of explored some of that, and we knew that it was important for her to feel clothed during birth. And so she went out, in one way, a strategy. So we look at triggers and we look at strategies and how can we prevent something from interfering with that experience. The strategy around the idea of being naked and exposed and her body being shamed was she went out and she spent a lot of time choosing a bra and choosing a robe. And so during the birth, she felt in control of that. She had chosen her clothes. She didn't have an outfit on from the hospital, the gown, and she felt very in control. And we worked virtually together, and so I wasn't able to be present at her birth. But the first thing she told me when she called, she said, "I had the baby, and guess what?" And I said, "What?" She said, "I took all my clothes off." I was, like she felt safe to open up to that.
It's your turn, Chavah. Last time my baby came in.
I'm sure my husband will come flinging it. It's like that video. I don't know if you saw it. It kind of went viral.
Yes, I was just thinking about it in Korea.
And the mom comes in and tries to pull the baby away. Oh, it was so funny, and I felt so much for them. Anyway, so the triggers, the strategies. I work with moms ahead of time to identify where some of their past may come in and affect their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So I put together this 10-page resource. It's kind of a lot to go through where we may have.
Right. But this is something that I might just want to, I want to, and I want to encourage other women to get their hands on, just to get a sense of where am I at.
Yeah. And it's just knowledge, right? It's a little bit of, the more knowledge we have, the better choices we can make. It's like, we may not realize that this is affecting us until you read it and you're like, oh, maybe that's a place I need to look at and explore.
Right. Or maybe I can read it in support of another woman. Yeah.
And the writing prompt is a little bit more introspective, like it kind of is forcing you to explore a little bit deeper than just reading it for knowledge's sake.
Right.
And so then moms can call, right? I do free consultations. Like we can just explore either some of this writing, or it wouldn't necessarily be a time to open up your whole story and let it out, but find out if there are some places that need a little bit more work.
Right. Maybe this would be a good time to call you up and say, "Hey, Chavah, this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me?"
Yeah, that's right. And we'll say,
how can you help
what's going on? What are you feeling?
It's not a mini therapy session.
No,
it's I'm thinking that I need help. Do you agree? And can you help me? And if so, how?
And if you can't, knowing that I can pass you on, not pass you on, but
refer you.
There may be somebody, refer you. There may be somebody who can help you more than I can. And man, I felt that one, thinking about as a therapist or as a counselor or as a doula, being able to acknowledge where I can help and where I can't, and knowing when it's time to refer someone on.
That's a sign of a professional. For sure. A professional, someone who knows what they can't do.
And so being able
that means you know what you can do, and it's another sign of, and it's another representation of boundaries. This is where I end. I know where I end and what I can do. Sometimes you see these groups where people, I'm a mental health group, and there's always one or two people who are like, I do that. Like, no, you can't possibly do all that.
You can't do it all. That's right. And that's, I don't know where it went, baby. Just a minute here. Play with this. And so then the groups that I run is a group right for you. So I do private sessions, but I encourage my moms to go into groups. And I run workshops that are 6 weeks long, and there's only 4 women in a workshop. And this allows us all to, each person to kind of go into her story and explore it. So each week is dedicated to one mom. And the rest of us...
You have to tell me about the first week first, because that's really important for me, though. The first week, you give me the lowdown.
I give you the lowdown the first week. We establish our rules, right? Like, we need it to be a safe place. I want you to feel, and this is done virtually or in person, but I've actually not run a workshop in person because people are just spread out, and you feel safe in your own space. And so there's kind of this barrier, like I'm talking to you on the computer and I can open up, but I also realize that I am in a safe space here. And so anyway, they can be done virtually, and they worked well. The first week, I think I touched on it a little bit. We kind of explore, Hey, babe. We explore some of these emotions in these feeling words. Where do you feel it? And we, an envelope. Okay, right there.
Feeling words.
And we look, the feeling words, and we look at what's ahead. And then I've created some prompts because some of us haven't even begun to explore this story, and some of us have, but you don't just do it alone, right? We do a private session, just you and I, before you get in the group and talk about.
How long is that session?
Your story. They tend to be about 45 minutes. It just kind of depends on what's there, how much you've dealt with it, you know.
Okay. That's good to know.
I don't cap it because sometimes we need to explore a little bit more.
So I can speak to you for 45 minutes and individually, so you know me, and then I join a group of women, and our first session is we just get to know each other, and we just develop this sense of cohesion in the group and safety. And then each week, one of us has a turn to share our story for half an hour, nonstop. We just go. Yeah,
that's right. No interruptions. I mute everyone, including myself, and you get to just talk. And this is abnormal because a lot of times if you are at a place where you're comfortable to share your story or even parts of your story, you start to talk and someone's like, oh my goodness, that, or you think that was, what about this? Or, hashtag me too. I mean,
right.
That is okay. Yeah, whatever. But, and you get lost in the crowd and you don't get to be heard, right?
You don't get that chance to tell your story and to make sense of it, to connect the dots, because you now have to reflect back to someone else.
That's right. Yeah. And so then the first step then is I unmute myself and I explore that a little bit more. Like maybe there was an area that it seemed like you touched on and then moved on, or I noticed in your body, you know, this tensing or this, you looked confused there, meaning there was something going on more. And so I try and reach in there and figure out what that was happening for you there. And then we open it up to everyone to interact with you. And this is a way, so like why groups? Because there's other people who hear you and can validate you. And then you realize that you're also not alone, right? You're not doing this alone. And then you hear other stories.
Right.
And you get to hear other people's experiences. And you realize that even though my story may be very different from the next person's story, we all felt the same things. Because it goes back to those primal emotions. There was that fear and that shame and that sadness. And we connect on a level that you don't get to connect with people so often at.
Right. And there's also something about the experience of...
Can people find Abba?
You get your story and I get to have mine. Like it's another way, it's another angle of owning my story, that this is my story and that's yours. And I get to own this. Like, wow, mine was different. And I get to experience what comes up for me as I reflect on what happened to you and what happened to me. And like that whole process sounds very powerful, very healing.
And you realize that you don't have to be triggered. There's that word, triggered. You don't have to, if someone shares a story, a lot of times another way we know if we've not dealt with our own crap is if you hear someone else's story and you get dragged into your own memories. Stuff starts coming up for you. And you realize, wow, it's okay. There's that. Sorry. It just took a while. It took longer than I anticipated to get there. Okay. You may not hijack somebody's story, but your emotions, what's happening for you is hijacking it. You have a lot of internal voices going. And hopefully, as we work through this workshop, a part of that healing process is not just telling your story, but hearing others' stories. And this is what I tell my moms that are in these during that first week. And then I remind you, as you hear Stacy tell her story, keep track of not only her story and some things that you want to kind of work through with her, but what's happening for you? What do you feel? What's your body doing? As you hear her describe that, what are you doing?
That's a great question. What is your body doing?
It's just that you're empathizing, like, wow, that really sucks. Like, you know, and that's good. We want to empathize. Or is there something more happening for you? Like, are you having to shut off? Or are you like feeling that pain Are you, in a way that's not just empathizing, you're taking it on too much, and why? And so that's why hearing other stories in this workshop is so powerful, because we find out what's hidden for us when we hear others talk.
And then if you find something that you really think you need to work on and go a little bit deeper into and understand it deeper, you want to connect with a therapist.
Yep. You connect with a therapist.
Yeah.
I have great referrals, Liba being one of them. Okay, there's something more here.
Yeah.
I get to pass, you get to, I pass the baton, not pass you on, but, and we can go from there. So,
Right. Brilliant. So, wow. Was this better than the first time? I
think so. I don't know. Was it? I mean, it was different
really
the first time, right?
I like talking just with you. I think I might continue doing these interviews just one-on-one with my experts.
Not that I didn't like the interaction, but I always, I'm wondering, do you have any questions, or, and not the questions can come later. Like, take questions, email me, email Liba. Like, I want to talk to you. I want to connect, right? This is the thing.
How do we reach out to you? How do we connect with you?
Yeah. Feel like you can connect with me by email, by phone call, by messenger text, because I understand that this...
by Boxer, by WhatsApp, by Tinder. All of those.
My Tinder, yeah. Swipe if you love me.
So many ways to connect these days.
I acknowledge that this is hard work. This is a hard place to go to. And like you said, your husband said, well, why didn't you tell me this? Well, I don't know. I guess I didn't trust you, honey. I'm sorry if that hurts, but this is where we're at. That this type of work takes trust. And I acknowledge that, and I understand that. And so I'm available to you to explore whether or not we're going to be a good match and you feel safe and confident with me. And before I ask you to commit to anything, right, we can just talk and get some coffee and sit down across, if you're not close to me virtually, we can just sit and get to know each other a little bit. And I invite you to do that. I want to do that. I'm not too busy. I don't have a schedule that's insane. I mean, I want to do this conversation with you like I did with Liba. So let's do it. And then we'll make a plan. And maybe it's that the action plan we develop means you don't have to do a workshop, or you don't have to get more therapy, or you don't have to, maybe we'll just come up with an action plan that you can do some stuff on your own, and you find that, that release, that comfort with this experience that you need. Or maybe, we find some other routes that you can go to find that.
So if you're watching this video, there's a link. There's a link above, there's a link below to get in touch with Chavah, to her either through her freebies, Writing to Heal, or Triggers 101, or personally through email. And you have I'm going to sneeze. You have a website.
Yes, I have a website.
Don't say it yet, because I'm sneezing. Okay,
go. Creating Space Birth Services. So that's my name. That's my website. That's my Facebook page.
That's a poster behind me.
Oh, I know. That's kind of silly. I was like, I had a friend that I was talking to. I hate the wallpaper. Oh my gosh. Let's just acknowledge the elephant in the room. This room needs redone. I hate it. I know you're all staring at it and judging me. We'll just put it out there. I had
judgment.
I have them for trade shows. Like, I go to vendor events. And
I love it. It's great.
So it's there because I had it rolled up, and my kids ended up using it as a sword. And I'm like, that's like $100 sign. What are you doing? I'm going to really chop your head off. Okay, deep breath. You are more important than $100 sign. Please give it to me. Okay, and then I hung it so that no one could get access to it.
Well, I think it's very appropriate there. I love it.
So Creating Space Birth Services, that's my website, www.com. That's my Facebook page. That's perfect. Chavah at Creating Space Birth Services is my email. You get
perfect. That. And they'll be written links, so it'll be really easy. You won't have to remember anything or spell anything correctly. Awesome. Chavah, thanks so much. I'm glad that we got to reconnect again. Take two. And I am really excited about sharing this with other moms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited also about this relationship
And if you're sitting here thinking, I kind of want to email, but I don't really want to, or I want to connect with me. Like really, just
yeah. We are here to offer support and to give women the sense that they are not alone and that they are worthy and deserving of the help they need. And if it means help figuring out what help you need. So awesome.
I have some videos too on my Facebook page that I went along with this triggers, one-on-one. I did some Facebook Lives that go along with each section.
Cool.
So that's another way that you establish trust with somebody. You just kind of like go on Liba's page on Motherhood in the Making. You just watch all her live videos and see that you're a real person and, we connect, or go on my Facebook page and connect through video. It's hard now. We kind of put up these barriers. Social media is fantastic in that we see people, but it also has created a lot of barriers for a lot of us. We don't know how to actually connect beyond just Facebook. And so video is a good way to do that. So watch the videos, it helps to feel more safe with someone.
Awesome. Okay, super. Thank you so much. Thanks for making the time in your early morning over there to connect with me. And I'll be in touch with you. And if anybody wants to reach out, not to hesitate.
Thanks, Liba.
Awesome. Okay, I'll speak to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye for now.